our enemies are more than willing, both past and present, to go to jail for what they believe in. Some of them are more than willing to make the ultimate sacrifice for what they believe in. Um, if the threat of the government saying, "Oh, those leaflets those leaflets are naughty. You can't hand out statistics that inform the British public that they're going to be a minority by 2066. You can't do that." If the government decides to make that illegal, I know it hasn't in this instance, but say it did, would that be enough to put you off? Really, would it be enough to stop you letting your people know the demographic dispossession of your people from their nation? If the answer is yes, if you would literally consider stopping letting people know that they're going to become a minority because the government tells you it's illegal. Not that I would advocate for anything illegal, of course, but if the threat of jail is so abhorrent to you and so someone's phone on the phone. If the threat of jail is such a terrifying prospect that you're going to stop dead in your tracks because you're doing something that isn't illegal, but the government may make it illegal and all the rest of it. If you are not willing to go to jail, then are you in the right fight? Because, like I say, and I'll reiterate the point, our enemies are more than willing to. And unfortunately for us, our enemies wield the power to persecute us from within the law. Basically, we have no political power, we have no social power in that respect. So, if you're, I'll boil it down to one sentence. If you're the type of person that's going to wobble at the first sign of trouble, then is your heart really in this fight? Do you really care about your people?
Today, I'm going to talk about something that's pretty close to my own heart: how nationalism and those within the nationalist movement treat young people. Crucially, we're talking about the next generation of nationalists, the ones that will go on to inherit the movement and take us forward. These are the very people that will one day either lead us to victory or carry on treading the failed path of the past, which will only lead to them not only damaging themselves, but also failing to take the movement any further forward. A lot of people listening to these podcasts will know who I am, but some of you won't. Some of you won't know my history, or you'll be unfamiliar with the roads that I've taken in life. So let me give you a very brief history of my political past. When I first got involved in politics, I joined the British National Party, and I quickly ascended to the position of youth leader within the party. At the time, I was studying at Leeds University, and I had my whole life ahead of me. I made decisions then that have coloured my whole life. Decisions I made when I was 20 ended up changing the entire direction my life took, and it closed off many paths that I could have taken. Most notably, I took part in a Channel 4 documentary. That documentary, for those who don't know, was called Young Nazi and Proud. I'm sure many of you will be familiar with it, and if you're not, feel free to look it up. I believe it is on YouTube. Now, when I ask you to look it up, I'm not saying that because I'm proud of being on that documentary, and I'm certainly not proud of my performance on it. Looking back now, I find it all rather embarrassing, and many parts are cringeworthy. And that's me being brutally honest. You see, what you think is great when you're 20 isn't necessarily great when you're 36. I've always looked back on that show, and I've always apologised for my behaviour in it. But as I've got older, I've realised one thing. The party should never, ever have let those kind of shows be filmed, let alone allowed a 20-year-old to have been followed around by the media. In fact, the party should have had a policy of sheltering their young members from that exposure. And when interviews were granted, any young member should have been accompanied by someone older with more experience. You see, back when I was being filmed for that documentary, I was a young man. And as a young man, I was full of energy and enthusiasm, and I was ready to throw myself into the line of fire whenever necessary. I was ready to give everything for the cause, and I spent a huge amount of time doing everything I could to promote nationalism. But along with my youthful enthusiasm came something else: naivety. Because when you're 20 or 21, you think you're going to live forever. You think you know best, you think you know it all, and you think that nothing can stop you.
It was mainly with my family, that was the issue. I had a lot of issues where essentially my family thought I was a criminal. I joked about earlier, they were acting as if I was in the mafia, which was how they were treating me. They thought I was some sort of criminal. My mum was saying how, they're gonna imply that they'd either kill or rape me in prison for being a racist. And I know I'm pretty handsome, but I'd like to think I'd stay safe. I'd do it TR style. I'd just stay in a solitary for my entire time there. Jokes aside, that'll never happen because, as we saw, charges got dropped. But I do find it bizarre that my mum thought that I'd be thrown in prison for a leaflet, though. It just shows how indoctrinated people are. But then as well, my other family members, they were essentially thought I was a criminal. I was constantly getting threats. I'd just get treated, be given the cold shoulder by the entire household, essentially. It was as if I'd done some great evil.
I remember when I was at school, my German teacher once said, "When you're your age, you think you'll live forever and nothing matters, and you think you're invincible. Only when you get to my age do you realise you should have done things differently and listened to the advice of those who knew better." Now at the time, I think we all laughed at him. But now, I know exactly what he meant. Whilst I was being filmed for Young Nazi and Proud, I was studying at Leeds University. Well, I was meant to be studying. I spent more time pulling down Socialist Worker Party posters and scratching off anti-Nazi League stickers. In fact, my world was consumed by politics. I spent more time leafleting, canvassing, and attending political events and meetings than actually working toward my degree. And it affected my studies, something that unfortunately I can't go back and change. Now, I can be open and honest today and admit that I made mistakes, but I feel I need to do more. I feel I need to try and help the next generation of young nationalists so they don't make the same mistakes that I did. Because believe me, the choices you make when you're in your late teens and early 20s affect the rest of your life. And at that point, you have everything in front of you, and you have so many options open to you. And I'm not saying what you should or shouldn't do with your life. What I am saying is, don't act rashly and don't do the things that close off avenues to you for the rest of your life. Don't do things that will close doors to you that can never be reopened. Don't close doors in your early 20s that one day you may wish to walk through. Now, this isn't just about me. You see, I've seen generations of talented young nationalists, the best nationalism has had in fact, make these same mistakes. I've seen young people lose their places at university. I've seen young people get criminal records for things that in the grand scheme of the world meant nothing. I've seen young people lose good jobs. I've seen young people lose their partners and break up with the mothers of their children. And none of this is a joke. It's all very sad. What makes me even more sad about this, though, is I've seen so many young nationalists suffering from depression because of the choices they've made, because of the things that have happened to them. And the thing that makes me so angry about all this is that that destructive cycle is still happening today. It's still happening right now. And what makes me really angry is that many older men that have made the same mistakes years before, men that should know much better, are not trying to stop this. In fact, many are encouraging it. It's just the same as when the BNP was happy for me to partake in documentaries and be filmed for TV shows. Older men are still egging on incorrigible and enthusiastic youngsters. It's like for some people, when they've made a mistake, when they've screwed things up for themselves, they want everyone to be in the same boat as they are. It's like there are some really bitter people within nationalism who have screwed up their own lives and now want to live through the next generation, encouraging them all to make the same mistakes they did, encouraging them to do foolish things and engage in pointless activities where they risk being imprisoned, risk criminal records, risk losing their education, risk losing their whole futures. It is as if some of these older men in nationalism get a kick out of reliving their mistakes through watching others carry out the same mistakes. But you see, I don't want that. I don't want to relive my mistakes. I'm sorry for what I've done wrong, and if I could grab hold of my 20-year-old self, I'd have some harsh words for him. I'd tell him, be a nationalist, leaflet, canvas, and be involved in the movement. But don't neglect your studies. Don't risk getting thrown out of university. In fact, don't even bother engaging with the lefties at uni. You're not winning them over. You're not stopping them. Leave them to get on with their pointless political activities. No one goes to their events anyway. Spend your time, instead, going to the library. Spend your time making sure that as many doors are open to you when you leave university as possible. Because that's where nationalism is going so wrong. We need these bright young men and women. We need the next generation to be excellent. We need solicitors, barristers, architects, accountants, teachers, designers, doctors, physicians, and marketing experts. We need our next generation to be the best. We need business owners, men and women who are a success in life, people with influence. And we have bright young people who can achieve that. We have bright young men and women that can be anything they want. And I want the youngsters in our movement to be a success. I want them to have good careers. I want them to be able to afford good lives. I want them to be the kind of people that find it easy to attract a partner. People who get married, who live happy lives, who have children and enjoy their lives. I want the next generation of young nationalists to have everything, to be everything they can be and achieve everything that many nationalists from the past, nationalists from my generation, have missed out on. So the last thing I want for them is to see them getting arrested, for them to drop out of their education or training. The last thing I want to see is our bright young stars being confined to a life of benefits and depression, a life where they can't get the best jobs, a life where they struggle to meet a partner or struggle to provide for their partner and children. That's not what I want for them. And I see that playing out. I see depressed young men posting on Facebook about how terrible their lives are. I see young people already struggling with depression because of the decisions they've made. Now I know that some young nationalists will be laughing at this and calling me a sellout, saying, I'm not who I used to be. I'm not like what I once was. And in a way, that's right. I'm not. Because I grew up. And that's why I see things differently. But I'm certainly not a sellout. In fact, I'm just as committed to our cause as I ever was. And before anyone says in the comments that I am trying to put people off, that's not what I'm trying to do at all. I want as many bright young people involved in nationalism as possible. But I want them to achieve their potential. I want the best of the next generation to go on and be better than my generation was. I want them to go on and be the best. Because it's the duty of each generation to ensure that the next generation goes on to scale even greater heights and achieve even more than they did.